You got to do one with Crystal later, but go ahead. I'm ready.
That's okay. That's okay. What's up, Flexies? Oh man, I'm so blessed and honored today. I got a great guest today. You probably heard me talk about him and his lovely, sweet wife, Mark Victor Hanson and Crystal. Crystal's going to be joining us a little later, but we have Mark Victor. My name's Chris Eryx. If this is your first time, watching Flex the Truth podcast, welcome. What I can tell you is go get some popcorn, go get a beverage, get your seatbelt on, because it's going to be a ride of your life. People know me as Baby Trump, but what I can tell you is I am a purveyor of the Lord. I have now been called the personal trainer of God. So I love that. Never thought I would ever hear that in a million years. But guys, we've got a heck of a show coming up. Just a couple of notes real quick. The shirt should be online and should be on my website no later than tomorrow. You'll see the Save Our Children shirts. I am so excited about. We're also going to have hoodies, also going to have hats. A percentage of that is going to go towards not only helping child trafficking, but aftercare, which is the most important, taking care of them afterwards. So myself and Lisa and Jim and Dan, we're so excited about being a big part of that. The other shirt that I have designed is Godfidence. So you've heard me talk about it on my show, on my podcast, on other podcasts about Godfidence. You too can own a shirt that says, I have Godfidence. I can, I will, I must. So let me get myself out of the way and let's get our good friend up here. Now, you probably, when I say his name, Mark Victor Hanson, I'm like, wow, that does sound familiar. But when I tell you he's the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, you're like, I know who he is. There it is, right? Mark, how are you?
Magnificently wonderful. Thank you. And better because you as a friend. How's that?
Oh, thank you. And we had a special moment in Tulsa. And again, everything goes back to Tulsa. Every single thing goes back to Tulsa. Clay called me today. I had a great conversation with Clay today. And we'll talk about that later on. But there was a situation that went on in Tulsa. And, Mark Victor and his wife, Crystal, they were privy to that, and Preston was there as well. And, we had a moment where we hugged, where we prayed, where we cried, where we had tears of not only joy, but of this relationship that we were, if you would, putting kindling on the fire. So, Mark, for the people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about you and, your life story.
Well, I'm blessed to have sold over 500 million books, thanks to having written 318 books, starting with the Chicken Soup of the Soul series. Really took everything to new zenith, but I've been writing 44 years. And now Crystal and I have a brand new book out called This is Chicken Soup on Steroids. It's called Ask, the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. And we're saying God coded absolutely everybody, Chris, at birth, at destiny, to do something great. And what happens is most of it gets stuck in getting a job, which means you're just over broke. And we're saying, look, there are 3 question lines that you got to ask. Ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And most people haven't been doing that. They ask themselves and forget to ask God, and they miss the program of what their life's supposed to be dedicated to.
Wow. And we talk about this in a little bit. Isn't it crazy how God just put that on my heart to talk about that? And that's what your book about. What I was saying is, we were talking about aging. And I want to share this with you. And, Dr. Mark Sherwood, because I give credit where credit is due, said people age old and people age young. And I was giving a major compliment to, Dr. Mark Victor Hanson, because he does not look his age. And, one of the major reasons is he's found God. Yeah, he's found God. And we were talking about that. And if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, Mark, because we touched upon that, but I think that's a great topic to talk about, is the supernatural.
At 2 levels. Well, first of all, Crystal and I are falling in love this decades ago, but we're sitting in Costa Mesa. We now live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we're at Mother's Market, a great restaurant. And there's a man of the cloth sitting across from us who just can't help seeing how in love we are. And so he leans in and says, do you mind if I tell you what it takes to stay indefatigably in love forever? Well, there's a question that begs to get an answer and ask another question. Yeah, I'd like to know what keeps people totally in love forever. I wanted to talk to Crystal. I had no interest in this man at the thought at that moment. Well, I'm 92. I've run Billy Graham Ministries for 20 years, since I was 22. And he said, here's the one thing we discovered. You got to pray out loud together every day. So every morning, Crystal and I wake up, we spend an hour together in prayer and meditation, and we sculpt our day, we sculpt our week, we sculpt our life for ourselves, our family, our kids, our country, our world. And I can tell you, it's working. Now, most people say, well, you don't know how bad it is. Well, it's bad because, you and I read in high school, it's the best times or the worst times. It's the best times you make it the best, right? It's up, if it is to be, it's up to me. And then you got to ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. And we can talk in depth about how to ask God if you want, but we pray every day. And up until then, Crystal and I both prayed in groups. We prayed at Holy Man Jams. We prayed out loud at church, but never thought that we ought to do that. And that's what causes our soul mate relationship go to the higher level, where you put two flames together that are candles lit, a jump 8 volt. We now have a twin flame relationship, which is as high as it can get.
Well, yeah, and I totally believe in that. And sometimes, people don't have that Godfidence. There's that word again, right? Where they're a couple, but and it's up to the man. It is up to the man to lead the relationship. Men, you hear me? It's up to you. You are the man of the house. That your woman is the bride, right? So you are to lead her. So like Mark does, he prays in the morning. I love to pray over meals. Every single meal, I love to pray over a meal. So we're eating 3 meals a day. That means we're praying 3 meals. We're praying 3 times a day. I always say the couple that prays together stays together, right? Because what it says, if there's 2, so shall it be. So when you pray, you could pray by yourself, but when you bring somebody else into it, whoever that is, especially if that's a loved one, if that's your soulmate, then why aren't you praying with God and praising? How about praising and worship, Mark?
Yeah, well, when you praise something, you raise it. So obviously, I praised my books to be bestsellers before they become bestsellers. And I praised the fact that I was when we were starting the book business in a big way with Chicken Soup, I interviewed the 101 best-selling fiction authors and the 101 best-selling nonfiction authors. I didn't ask, how do you guys write? I thought I knew how to write. That may be arrogant and obnoxious, but the fact is I was pretty good at writing. But I asked them, how did you market and sell more books than everybody? And then I created a wild business plan. And the reason the 144 publishers turned us down is because I said I was going to sell 1 billion books during my lifetime. And I'm sure they looked at it, yawned, and go, this guy's out to lunch. He didn't know what he's talking about, but I'm halfway to goal. And the other day, you'll appreciate this, Chris. I'm on the show with the guy who runs Amazon bestseller list, Mark Devereaux. And Mark says, hey, Mark, Victor Hanson, you are the Roger Bannister of books. Do you remember who Roger Bannister was?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The runner. Yeah. You had to run a mile. Yeah.
But remember, before he did that in 1953, everyone knew your heart would jump out of your chest.
Nobody could do it. Nobody could do it.
But then I said, you know what happened in the next week? He said, no clue. I said, in the next week, 119 people did it. And he said, well, what's happening now? I said, well, 3 years ago, there's never a $1 trillion company, and now we have 5, and we've got 2 companies that are already over $1 trillion. So we're going to, for the first time, to break through stuff. And I believe if we're made in the image and likeness of God, Genesis 1:28, and then you go to Ephesians, and the Apostle Paul said, you're God's greatest masterpiece. Now, if you're God's greatest masterpiece, you're here to be a record breaker, a record setter, and you're here to do something unique. You're here to fulfill your destiny. And everybody's got a destiny, 8 billion of us. I don't know what your destiny is, but what we're saying is, because 130 kids are committing suicide a day, if you've got a parent, if you're a parent and you love your kids, get 2 copies and go over every question in the book with your kid and let them answer the question and write out the answer. It'll be amazing. Your whole life will be loving, intertwined beingness, and you'll go to higher states of elevated spiritual consciousness.
Yeah, I love that, Mark, is because parents stopped being parents a long time ago. a
Yeah,
long
they
time ago.
be the parent, not a good idea.
Right. They want to be their best friend. And that has a lot to do with TV and programming and the enemy, right? Because the enemy does not want you to be a parent. The enemy wants you to be a friend, right? Because then there is that gray area, right? And,
Right.
I know for me, I lost my relationship with my son at the age of 15 because I was a parent and I chose to be a parent. But here's the one thing, Mark, that I told people. That child of yours, those children that are in your home, you need to take care of them because they're not yours. They're a rental. They are God's children, and He bestowed them on you as a gift. That's His gift because it's His children, and He is trusting you and blessing you that you are going to teach them the godly way. So when it's time for them to go home, they'll be ready and they'll be battle tested. That is your job as a parent, nothing else. Nothing else.
Right. I'd agree with that. That's easy. And like I said, we got 6 grandkids. Our grandkids are doing marvelous. Our little 6-year-old 2 years ago, for Christmas, he got a Dick Tracy watch you and I had called, but it's called a Gizmo.
Yeah.
And he can only call his parents and grandparents because we got really good relationship. And all of a sudden, we were in Hawaii on vacation. I own a company, Crystal, I own a company there called naturalpowerconcepts.com. We're a device company that's booming. And all of a sudden, it comes all Gizmo, and I knew it had to be Everett, a 6-year-old. And he says, Grampy? I said, yes, sir. He said, are you alone? I said, I know Grandma is Mimi. I said, no, it's Mimi and Grampy here. What would you like? He said, if you're alone, I got to talk to you. I said, where are you? I said, I'm in the closet. I said, why? He said, you know those books you write, the great books? I said, yes, sir. He said, are you still writing them? I said, yes, sir. He said, can I write the next book with you? I thought, out of the mouths of babes, because what did they say? Babes come, everybody's got to be like a child. This childlike innocence. So we put Everett's story as the first story in his book. This kid is so precocious that he just was given a Rubik's cube and he did it the first time in 1 minute. I mean, the kid, well, Preston, his dad.
I know Preston. Oh yeah, Preston's awesome. Yeah, I mean, to know Preston is, I mean, if he's anything like Preston, I can only imagine.
No, this kid is, all the kids are doing great, but it's because we opened. And I forgot to say one important thing. When Everett called, he said, can I ask you a question, Grandpa? I said, son, for the rest of your life, you can ask Mimi and I anything you want about anything, and we'll give you the best, honest answer that we know. And if we don't know, we'll find somebody that does know, because somebody knows almost everything. Not everything, but somebody knows almost everything. And that's the way good parenting and grandparenting should be. I mean, grandparents I travel around a lot doing big talks with Zig Ziglar. And he said, if I knew how much I love the grandkids, I would have been better to the kids.
It's so true, because you're blessed as a parent, but you're more blessed as a grandparent. I always, I saw my mom and dad, I saw what they went through as parents, but I saw how they enjoyed being a grandparent. I mean, they loved it. They reveled in it. And then my parents weren't the best parents. Let me tell you something, when it came to grandparents, hard to beat for grandparents of the year, because they were just a total different person being a grandparent.
Well, that's why, even grandparents ought to read this book, because here's my position, and you can tell me whether it's yours or not, or anyone listening, but if you're still alive, you haven't fulfilled your destiny.
Oh.
You say, just a second, I live in Florida and I'm retired and I live at the village or whatever. All that's wonderful, but that isn't the end. You don't get a fulfilled life by playing bridge or pickleball or tennis or golf every day. You're here. What did Christ say? The greatest amongst you is servant of all, not servant of few, servant of yourself, servant of all.
That's right. And I love when you say that, because when you talk about destiny, I didn't know what my calling was up until, 9 months, almost a year ago, at 51, and so my whole entire life, I had one guy say to me, he came on my podcast. He's like, well, look at you. He's like, you were a model. You were a Chippendale dancer. You were, reality star. You were this, and you sold this, and you did this. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, now you're an evangelist. He's like, you're full of crap. I said to him, I said to him, I said, why am I full of crap? You jotted down everything that I've done in my life. And what's a little creepy is like, you know, everything I did in my life. Like, you know what I mean? But my point being is, I've done so much because I was getting ready to be battle tested for what's going on now. This is the greatest time of our life right now. We're so blessed to be here, right? God wants us here because our destiny, to what you said, more, our destiny is in full. You know, people say, well, you're baby Trump. You have your destiny. You know what? You got your podcast. That's not my destiny. That's a platform. You and I spoke about, you know, me doing a book. You know, I'm going to be doing a book next. Then after that, my destiny is my ministry. You know, I'm getting into child trafficking. Me and you talked about that a little bit. But my destiny, I believe, is my ministry. Now, I didn't figure that out until a year ago. So if I'm at 51 and I figured that out, but you know how I figured it out, Mark? Everybody's trying to find out who they are, right? We always, through our whole lives, right? We read the self-help books, right? Like you said, Zig Ziglar, right? I was a big Zig Ziglar fan, right? We want to know who we are, who we are. It's whose we are. Once we know whose we are, we know where we're going. Like you said, destiny, not where we are right now. And that's where people have to find.
Exactly, because life, the University of Life's a journey, and I'm glad you're an evangelist. We're writing a book. When I went bankrupt in 1974, I've been with one of the smartest guys on the planet, Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller, Einstein's best student. The guy invented spherical buildings called geodesic domes made out of triangles. And I was trying to be Bucky, and that was a dysfunctional behavior. I built the Wall Street Racquet Club, Botanical Gardens, aviaries. I was smoking, but that's when the oil embargo hit in 1974. And I crashed and burned so fast, I had to check the book at the library, how to go bankrupt by yourself. So what I'm teaching is if you ask the wrong question, you get the wrong result. But for a while, I'm suffering. And one of the things I did is I went to church with two guys early in the morning at Norman Vincent Peale's church, the guy who wrote the Power Positive thing. And then they said, hey, Dick, let's go up to Harlem. They didn't know any better. It's Washington Heights, to Reverend Ike's church, 5,000 black people. And I said, yeah. Anyhow, he hit my spiritual spark plug at a level I didn't expect. Long story very short, he and I spent 7 years. I lived in New York the next 7 years, went there to church every Sunday with both churches, but he and I became close friends. Well, he died in 2009. His wife called me and said, you're one of his best buds. Would you mind writing his biography? I said, Mrs. Eichrencoder, I love you and I love Reverend Ike, but I said, I don't do biographies. So I got her a ghost. She didn't like the ghost. She comes back a year and a half ago and says, hey, would you write it? Now we're writing from wishes to riches, and we're almost done with it. We're 80% done.
Really?
And it's exploring the God in you, because what he did different than everyone is he said, everyone says, where's God? And he also says, oh man in the sky with a big beard. You know what I mean? No, it's not. Because when Jesus was asked, where's the kingdom of heaven? He says, within.
Yep.
That's basically a look. So once you get to the kingdom of heaven, he says, then you got to ask yourself, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? But back to the being value, and that's why in this book, the big chapter is you're a human becoming, not just a human being.
You're the only person I ever heard say that other than me.
Yeah, you're becoming an evangelist, because my position, and I think it's your position, I won't talk for you, and you can agree or disagree, but is it we need evangelism more now than ever, because you're either full of God or God less. In other words, hey, we're on an airplane and the person's wearing a mask, which I'm really opposed to, like you are, and it said Godful. And I thought, wow. Then the people that don't get it are God less.
Right.
And we got people, especially in politics, that are God less. We can't go there right now.
Yes. Well, when you talk about human being, like the human become, I love that, because I'm the only person that's ever said that. And people say, well, what do you mean? Because a tree can only be a tree. That's it. A tree can be a tree. Us, we can evolve, we can change, we can adapt. I tell people, look, if you're happy today with what you have, congratulations, because you deserve it. You deserve every single thing that you have and you own today. Not what? You're not happy? Well, that's great. because you can change that. You can change that. Where a tree, you can't. Tree is a tree.
That's right. The law of identity says an acorn becomes an oak tree.
Right.
But a human, because of God's free will, has two things nobody else got, maybe three things. But first of all, you've got the only ability to ask that exists. And Jesus said, ask and you receive, but he didn't detail it. So we said, well, we'll help him out and we'll detail it because he told us to do it. So we did it. Number two is you've got the only imagination. No other animal has human imagination, because your imagination is a front end of materialization stuff, like you said, money, cars, houses, all of which you can have as much as you want if you're in the kingdom of heaven within, creating it without. And then number two is it's the front end of realization, because you're here to have your soul realized. And my teacher in speaking, Cabot Roberts, said, if it's cloudy in the pulpit, it's raining in the pew. Meaning that if you really are here for wisdom, and one of the things we're teaching in our book, Ask, is ask for wisdom. Pray. Crystal and I pray every day, God, give us the wisdom to handle these podcasts right. Give us the wisdom to write the right stuff. Give us the wisdom to take our businesses to new heights. Give us the wisdom to do right by our kids, our grandkids, our partners, our associates, our colleagues, our clients, our customers, and all the people in the world that we can source and serve and take to higher levels and elevate the whole planet to be better than it's ever been. Because the goal in this decade is to make the world work for 100% of humanity. We've never had that technology before. So you could literally talk to 8 billion people, whether it's you or me, given the cell phone, given the internet, given artificial intelligence, AI, given augmented reality, given all this cool stuff that didn't exist even a decade ago.
More, I had a guest the other night, Oksana, who is an immigrant and wife of a governor candidate for Oregon. And she was dying to come on my show. And I was like, okay. So I brought her on my show. And I learned something from her that I really want to share with you, because you being an author, you have an obviously imagination. It really didn't dawn on me until we talked about this. But you know what's so profound is that you talk about imagination. God says to be childlike, right? And when you're a child, your imagination, right? You know, as little boys, I remember going underneath the blanket, you know, like having tents and forts, right? Your imagination just goes wild, right? You think you're going to be an astronaut, right? Or, you know, an actor, an actress, or a rock star, or whatever, because of your imagination. The reason that we read books is that if you write a book, and okay, so let's say the title is Pinocchio, and you write a book on Pinocchio, and I write a book on Pinocchio, and we have somebody else write a book on Pinocchio, right? Although the storyline will be the same, the plot, it's going to be interpreted differently because of your imagination, my imagination, and somebody else's.
Right.
What Hollywood has done and what the cabal has done is that they've taken that imagination away from us more. Now, listen to this. This is what I came up with. When you read a book, you interpret it the way you want to. Like, I remember reading The Shining, right? I don't know if you've ever read The Shining. If you read The Shining and you watch The Shining, it's night and day, right? There's many movies like that where they take the book and then they bring it to Hollywood and it's watered down. It's not the same, right? Because your imagination is better than what they're putting up on the screen. What they've done now is they've taken that away and they've taken all the books and turned them into movies and TV shows. And now what they're doing is they're ramming down your throat what you are to interpret and how you are to interpret that book instead of you reading it yourself.
Right. Yeah, and a book has, 4 levels. First of all, there's a physical thing called a book. Second of all, there's the words in the book. Next, there's what the words on the page say and mean. But the most important one is the fourth one. What you're doing is, what is your imagination? What is your realization? What is your understanding? What is your takeaway? What are you able to do with it? Because books are the greatest screaming value on history. I mean, right now, if you were to buy this at Amazon, it's $14. Well, we've had people make $1 million with it, or $10 million with some of my books, and you know, one guy $30 million. Actually, one guy, one of the stories we have in here. Can I tell one of the stories out here?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we say there's 7 roadblocks to asking. There's a sense of worthiness. There's a sense of doubt, a sense of fear, a sense of pattern paralysis, a sense of excuseology, and then number 7 is disconnection. But this guy, Jim Stovall, I didn't meet him until Charlie Tremendous Jones, who's a great man, and said, you're going to be the same person you are today 5 years from now, except for the people you meet in the books read. And Stovall, he sends me Jim Stovall's book, The Ultimate Gift, which if you haven't read it, you want to read it and see the movie. Anyhow, and Stovall's blind, but I didn't know that when I read it. I said, this book is so great, it's got to be a movie. And it became a movie, he said, because when Victor Hanson talks, the world listens. That's very kind. Anyhow, Stovall is 19 years old. He's bigger than a house. He's strong. He's fast. He wants to be an NFL player. He gets recruited. They do the medical, and the doctor comes back shaking his head and said, kid, this is the worst news I've ever given anyone. You got a rare disease. You're going to be totally, absolutely blind for the rest of your life, permanently, in 6 months' time. Stovall goes home and is crying in his cups. He's in a little 9x12 room. He's got a telephone, a television, and a computer, and he's feeling terrible. His mother said, go down to the blind meeting, see if they can make you happy. Gets there and sits next to a woman, and they're listening to an echo chamber of negativity from other blind people, but he loved watching movies when he was still sighted, and he hits this woman next to him who was a blind stenographer, Kathy, and says, boy, I wish we could see what happens in movies when somebody throws a right hook or the tires screech out. I can't tell what's happening. Why can't somebody do something? She hits him in the ribs and says, Jim, we're somebody. Here's the big question to ask. Why can't we do something? Long story compressed, they create narrative TV. They got 14 million people paying $10 a month for the blind to see movies and TV and listen to stuff. And it's big, it's in Tulsa. So I meet him for the first time a couple of weeks ago. And he said, Mark, if I live 100 years, there'll never be a day I don't thank you and Crystal my prayers. And he's got a wife named Crystal. He said, because I now write books I can't read. And I make movies I can't watch. Now that, from the Bible, is the last chapter of Genesis, Joseph and his many colored coat.
Right, yeah, right.
My good. And some of the people who are hanging on, listening to you and I right now, Chris, are hanging on by their fingernails. I'm not making fun. I'm not making light. I'm not making it easy. Look, Christ said, it's hard, but it's worth it. And the point is, you and I have gone through you didn't get to build this great body and be strong without a lot of butt-breaking sweat. I mean, I sweat so much sometimes when I'm exercising. I got to tell you, even when I spin 3 days a week and I do muscles 3 days a week, or we climb all the highest mountains. When you come out here, we'll take you hiking. And my eyelids even sweat. And I didn't know that was possible until, in maybe the last decade. How hard I work out, because I look, I've only got this body right now. Now I plan on living to be 127 with options for renewal. Now, why do I say that? Because it says in Genesis 6:3, thou shalt live 120 years. And I figured, well, if 120 is average, I'm not interested in being average. If you believe Ephesians that you're here to be God's greatest masterpiece, and you're here to be a record breaker, a record setter, you're here to master your life. You're here to master evangelism like Reverend Ike did. And he had 20 million people following him. And you got to be big on TV. You got to be big on radio. You got to be big touring the country and bringing out other celebrities and seeing what you can do.
Yeah, I the one thing, there's a lot of things I love about you, but I remember walking down the hallway and I didn't know who you were, and and I got to meet you and shook your hand, but I saw how you are with your wife.
How am I with my wife? I want to hear this.
Oh man. And I saw how your wife looked at you. You know what I mean? And I was sitting there and I just was in awe. And I was like, that is a godly man, because the way that you treated her. I saw you, 3 days in a row. We're on stage together, we're in the finale. I went by your booth. I came, saw you out, you autographed the book. I mean, I watch people because I want to see what they do in the dark, because it exposes them in the light. I've seen so many people to my face be a certain type, and then behind my back be certain ones, right? So what I saw with you was this genuineness, this unconditional love. You know, you would have never known that you and Crystal were married that long. You would think almost like you were newlyweds. You know how newlyweds, you know what I mean? Like little teenagers, right?
You're
But
on her. You gotta tell that to her.
I
That,
told Crystal, but it was so endearing. Yeah, it was so endearing. And you know, for me, I'm gonna get a little choked up, but when I see a man revere a woman, it shows me what type of man he is. You know, I see these other men that put women down. I see these other men that just rip women apart. You know, and they're married or they have a girlfriend. And, you know, if you're around me and you want to be my friend, you want to be in my circle, you don't have to do nothing but be a God-fearing man and have good ethics, values, and morals. And then if you have a woman, you better revere her and you better raise her up. If not, you're gone. You're gone. You know, there's a person I toured with, I'm not going to mention any names, and he hit on women left and right. And he has a girlfriend, and that girl treats him great. And it made me sick to my stomach. And I couldn't look at him in any other light. Does that make sense? Like I couldn't, it didn't matter. Anything else that he did that was good, I couldn't get past the pig in him. You know, I couldn't get past the way that he treated his girl. It made me so sick to my stomach. And to see you revere, you know, Crystal, your lovely wife, and hopefully we get to see it because she is a sweetheart. I say behind every good man is a greater woman, and this is definitely the case here. And then Preston, you know, meeting Preston, you know what I mean? That was awesome. And I say everything goes back to Tulsa because I truly believe, talking to Clay today, you know, because I asked him what's the next chapter in his life, and I'm going to have him on October 4th after we do the podcast symposium in Tulsa again. And he's going to go back to helping people with their children and help them get homeschooled and stuff like that. And, you know, we had this conversation, and, you know, I love when people raise other people up and say, hey, listen, you know, you're my ride or die. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I'm looking to write a book, and, you know, Mark Victor talked about, hey, look, I have a publishing company. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've been waiting, holding out. There is somebody else that was in, you know, line, but I mean, Mark's my boy, so I'm gonna go with Mark, obviously, right? But I love that, number one, that how you look at your wife, how you raise her up, how you revere her, how she looks at you. I mean, it is, man, I'm telling you, people, it is, you can see it, you can feel it, you know it's not BS. And then you take that love, both of you, and what do you do with your fans? My gosh, the love. I mean, the love that you guys have just on your fans, you know, when you're sitting there in line, you know, whether you get a picture, get an autograph, and just how tender you are, you know, to them. That's what I got to see that I never got a chance to tell you or Crystal. And I waited, obviously, to say it on public in front of everybody, in front of millions of people, right? But, you know, I wanted the world to know about you, you know, and Crystal.
I am deeply appreciative, but I just, you know, I wrote down 267 things I needed in my ideal wife because I went through a very painful, expensive divorce long ago. So I wrote down all these things. I'm just going to read some. She's got to be wholesome. She's got to be fresh and spring-like, young-minded, and thinks forever young. Back to what you were saying, because I don't want, you know, I got a lot of problems with people who aren't being clean. Has an original, right mindset. Loves me in all my dimensions. And I love her dimensions because, you know, Christ said, my house has many mansions, many dimensions. If it weren't so, I would have been the first to tell you. But in far as it is so where I am. Now, I am is God's name in nature, because when Moses is saying, God, who should I say sent me? He says that I am sent, right?
Right.
Disciplined. She's got to be disciplined. She's got to not be jealous, because what you saw is that we're going to be friendly with everybody, but the next one is in dark, monogamous. I had that bolded, right? Because that just has to be. Yep. Enchanting, seeks out the good, compelling, joyful. It wants sacred experiences, because what else is there? Right? Is bright-eyed, because I don't. And by the way, I do all the negative stuff, like she can't be an alcoholic, she can't be a drug user, she can't smoke. I mean, people that smoke. I mean, you've probably been with somebody during your long 50 years of life.
Oh yeah.
That smokes, it tastes like an ashtray.
You know what I say, Mark? I say you don't smell like an ashtray. You smell like an ass tray.
She's got to want to serve. She's got to have a positive attitude. Be socially adept, extraordinary, proud to be with me, and vice versa, which is what you saw. Have a great design sense, personally, professionally, and home interior. And you haven't been to our house yet, but of course you're invited.
I'm a designer. I could tell.
Yeah, no, she's a great dresser, beautiful to behold, lives with grace, dignity, and spiritual ease, grace, and spiritual dignity, is adoring. We give ourselves totally and completely to the other, and we work on well-beingness, mutually agreed upon boundaries. Truly my best, closest friend. I'm only reading that for this simple reason. You've got a lot of people listening to us that are going, yeah, it's easy for you to say, what do you want? And put it in writing, because the Bible says, write a thing, make it clear, it'll be established on you. What do I write? That's what you're here for. You're here to think and then write, right? Think, ask, imagine. What do you want in your person? Because when you're 16, you go, I want him strong and solid, like a rock, like Chris. Look, if you're a babe, that's nice. But from a man's point of view, I want her to have a hot body.
Right.
But superficial. And it's not bad. It just isn't enough. That's all I'm saying. It's not dimensional. It's not complete. It's not comprehensive. It's not fulfilling, because you're more than that. Because if he has a good body today and quits exercising, watches too much TV, and eats junk, he's going to have junk in it for a body and a brain and health.
You're so right, because one day we're going to all be dust to dust, right? And so the looks are going to go away, the body's going to go away. The only thing that's going to be left is the heart and the soul and the eyes, right, so to speak, because I say the eyes are the window of the soul. And so when you're with somebody, you better like them. Not only you better like them, there's a thing called soul staring. Have you ever heard of it? Soul staring. So I want you and Crystal to do this if you haven't done this. So soul staring is where you're in front of somebody, like me and you right now.
Right.
Okay? And we just get real close to one another, and we just stare at one another.
Oh yeah, we've done that.
We just stare. You don't say nothing.
With a candlelight, it works and takes you to higher dimensions.
Oh yeah, you don't say nothing.
In listening to very high music like Steve Halpern or like David Foster's.
Yeah. Don't say nothing and just look at one another and stare at one another. And you do that. And I don't mean like, don't do it for 10 minutes. Hey, do it for 40 minutes. Do it for an hour. Do it for a couple of times. Instead of going out to a bar on a Friday or a Saturday night, why don't you sit home, like Mark said, put some nice music on, put a candle on, and soul stare. Let me tell you something. You will learn about that person. It will be either good or it will either be bad. But once you look into somebody's soul, that's the problem now, Mark. We are so inundated on getting things done, going somewhere, getting the kids here, getting the kids there, and we don't connect. We don't connect with humans anymore. We're not connecting with the heart. We're not speaking. We're not having conversations. We're not soul staring. So soul staring has been around forever. And you really want to get to know somebody, you soul stare. How I learned about it watching this guy, I can't remember his name, he was on Netflix. And it was this guy that was prejudiced against Mexicans. And what they did is they put him in a room, like knee to knee, okay, and with a Mexican. And then he found out after he soul stared with that Mexican that he is 3% Mexican. And so then he went in the room again and had a soul stare with that same guy, knowing he was 3% Mexican. And the guy bawled like a baby. He hugged him. He reached out and hugged him and couldn't control his emotions because he was so wept with guilt and sadness because of how he treated this Mexican. You know, and that soul stare, let me tell you, you want to change your relationship? I dare you to soul stare.
I agree totally, absolutely. Everybody needs to do that with the right person. And what you, the other thing you're going to see is that the dimensionality of the person, they start to shape shift. And the transition, right? What I say is when you write a book, three things: it's got to be unique, it's got to be transformational, and it's got to be inevitable. And let's just use the, you know, when I did my 1 Minute Millionaire series, made more millionaires than any other book. We use a butterfly as the logo because it's the universal symbol of freedom. But when a caterpillar is crawling around, it goes, man, I'm building this damn thing called a cocoon. This is the end of my life. It's, I'm gone. He doesn't know that he is going to be in a cocoon. I don't think, by the way, I don't think they think, but I look, all life has something, but I don't think they have a mind. But I'm making this up right now. But he didn't know he's going to become, or she, the most extraordinary butterfly ever, right? And that's what transformation is. And that's why I'm saying, look, all of us are like caterpillars right now. We've been in this cocoon called COVID confinement lockdown worldwide, and worse in places like you and I have talked about in the past, Australia and England, where they can't even go to the grocery store, which is really absurd. And what we're doing is we're just ready to break out, and we're ready to let the world, America's got to lead again and go into high flight, high, visible, elevated, looming, ascending flight. Just like Christ said, Christ is risen. The Christ in us is supposed to rise and be bountiful and beautiful.
Wow, I love that. I don't know if I told you this or not. Did I tell you I saw a dragonfly for the first time in my life?
And your nose and your girlfriend's.
Yeah, right. So I, you know, sitting there and I'm like, oh, this is, you know, a little bit crazy, but seeing it for the first time and then seeing them mate. And I was like, what are they doing? And so the one dragonfly is here, the other one's literally upside down with the antenna, and it's in the shape of a heart. And I was sitting there and I was so amazed that I never saw anything like this in 52 years of my life. And then when I went and I did research, because I always do research if I don't know something, and I saw that meant two things. One, biblically, it meant that people's hearts changing from light to dark. The other one was that you have a one of a kind relationship, because you're not even supposed to see dragonflies. Never mind see the mate. And I've asked a lot of people, have you seen dragonfly? Have you seen dragonfly? Have you seen a mate? Like it landed on my brain. Like I was like, are you kidding me? Like I was so blown away and so taken back. And to what you said, I have never, ever taken in nature before, right? And now being in Texas, it's about nature, right? It's beautiful, but you start to live in the moment, if you would, and not get caught up in everything else, and recall and manifest your blessings because you're so thankful for what you have already. I always say that God's not going to give you more unless he trusts you what you have, right? And so just sitting there and just taking nature, and like you talk about the butterfly, I would never even talk about another insect or a bug or anything. And here I am talking about a dragonfly.
So you told me that story. That night we were out with Preston and his grandkids, and we're at a place we'll take you, Phil's Grill. It's a magnificent golf course and all that. But we're done dinner and it's sunset and it's just beautiful. We go down to the water at this golf course, and Everett, who we've talked about, our grandson who's now 9, says, "Well, Grampy, look at how they're fighting." And I'm going, "I just heard about this. This is too much. I can't believe it. God's really got these guys out in abundance on the planet, and they're, the whole heart and the whole thing. But I'm not going to tell them what they're really doing."
They're fighting.
Crystal's pinching me to make sure that I don't tell them, but it was just, he said they're fighting, and a lot of them are fighting. And I'm going, "Oh God, I just got done hearing my friend Chris talk about that. Then suddenly we're seeing exactly the same thing." So it's part of the, remember what I said, unique, transformational. We're in the most transformative time in human history, just what you said. And for those, in high school, you had to read, it's the best of times or the worst times. It's the best of times if you and I make it the best of times. And it's up to us to do just that, make it the best of times for ourselves and everyone else. Yeah,
I love when people look at a glass and they go, "Is that half empty or is it half full?" I used to say, "Oh, it's overflowing." And they're like, "What?" like I'm an optimist. I'm not a pessimist. I'm not, a person that's positive. I am an optimist. In the Bible, it says, if they don't have vision, they will perish, right? So even though it might look, like you said, Dr. Mark, like it might look vague out there, it might look real dark out there right now. Yeah, like everybody's like, "Chris, why are you so excited all the time? Why are you happy? Why are you loving all the time? Why? Look at what's going on. Aren't you upset? Aren't you angry? Aren't you depressed?" Look, I am human, right? I have the same feelings you do. I get frustrated. I get sad. I get angry, right? Here's what I know though. I, like Dr. Mark, I go to the end of the book and I read the last chapter and I know how the book ends. God wins. God wins. So if God wins, why am I going to play the victim? I'm going to be the victor because God wins. It's almost like, well, I know who's going to win the Super Bowl this year. Really? They only played one game. Yeah, well, I already know. So I'm going to put everything I own. I'm going to take out a loan, put everything on. Chris, that's a lot of money. Yeah, I know. Because in the end, I know who wins. That is what we got to do, Marcus. We got to put our faith back into Jesus Christ, not into man, not in a politician. I'm doing a podcast. I can't wait, Monday. And it's going to be titled, DJT is not your hero. The hero lays within you. And what I'm going to do is have a roundtable with 2 other podcasters, and we're going to discuss things that don't look too good for DJT. But what I want to do is I want people to understand that he's a man and that he's not our hero, and that the only hero we have is Jesus Christ. That's it. That's it.
Super.
Super. And that's what we got to do. We got to put God back into school. We got to put God back into our lives. That's why you and Crystal, you have God in the center of your life. Crystal has God in the center of her life. In your marriage, you have God in the center of your marriage. I always say that you take care of her wants, desires, needs. She takes care of Mark's wants, desires, and needs. See how, guys, that works? He takes care of her, means he serves her, right? He doesn't serve him. You didn't hear me say he serves himself. He serves her and she serves him. Why relationships are destroyed and why they break up is because one or both become selfish and they do not want to serve one another. It only takes one person to destroy it.
That's right.
You have one person that's selfish in a relationship that does not want to serve the other, wants to serve themselves. Somebody's getting served twice. Right? That's how I look at it. Somebody in that relationship is getting served twice and somebody's not getting fed. And eventually, the person that's not getting fed, it's not going to bode too well, right? Yep, exactly.
Said the king, well, said, love your neighbor as yourself. You got to have positive, correct self-love so you can love your neighbor, your spouse, your kids, your animals, all the world.
Yeah, I truly believe that. I did not love myself like I should have until the last year. And now, because I learned how to love myself, I can go out and spread all that love to everybody else. But it wasn't until I learned how to love myself the right way, not in a narcissistic way, not in a vanity way, but in a self where I loved myself. And what does that mean? People say to me, what does that mean? Love yourself. Mark, like when you hear that, Mark, what do you think when people say, what do you mean by love yourself?
You have positive and correct self-awareness of who you are and God, who God is in you.
See, I love it. I say, whose you are and know where you're going. But most importantly, I tell them you're honest with yourself and you have boundaries. You have boundaries with people. And because if you love yourself, I used to be a people pleaser. I used to try to please every person around me. And, the more people you're around, the more people you got to please. And sooner or later, as you're pouring into everybody, who's pouring into you?
Exactly correct.
If you don't have God in the center of your life pouring into you, and I love what you said, you got to be careful what you listen to, people that you're around, what you read. What you read, I think, is so powerful. Is it putting emotional deposits into your mind and your body and your soul, or is it ripping it out? Is it sucking the life right out of you, like pornography?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we're teaching that, ask yourself, ask others, and ask God in our book, Ask the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. Because what we're saying is before you go to sleep at night, if you don't know your destiny, you've got to say, God, what's your destiny for me? God, what's your destiny for me? God, what's your destiny for me? 400 times before we go to sleep. Push back sleep, because we all get distractions. And then you're going to wake up probably in the middle of the night. So you got to tell your sweetie kids, hey, if Mark's telling the truth, I'm going to wake up. So what I need you to know is I got paper and pad. I'm going to have to turn on the light, and you're going to take a note, because your subconscious, you say, well, I'll remember in the morning. I'm a little groggy right now. You won't remember. So you got to literally get up and write it down. So when Jack and I wanted the right title for Chicken Soup of the Soul series, him and his house respectively in Santa Barbara and me in Newport Beach at the time, California, we both said 400 times, make the best thing, make the best thing, make the best thing, make the best thing. He calls me at 2:58 in the morning. Now this is 1989, before cell phones existed. So the whole house wakes up. My little daughter was becoming a vet, so we got 88 animals in 1 acre, which is way too many. And they're all going crazy. And Jack says, chicken soup. I said, for the soul, we got it. Now, we still had 144 publishers say, hit the road, Jack, and then our agent fired us. But at least we knew the right title, the title that was going to make it. And we knew everybody wanted our stories, because life is a story. Christ called them parables. Parables, same thing. Doesn't matter, but everybody gets it. And once you got a story and the principles in the story and you understand it, now you can unwrap your life and make it go the way you want it and make it work in a totally effective way for yourself and your world.
I always say facts tell, stories sell. Like your testimonial to God. Like to me, that is the most important thing. Me writing the book, it's funny. I had a speech back in February, that I just came up with, and it was called Be Bold, Be Weird, Be You. And I talked to somebody, I told you this, Dr. Marsha Mason. She's like, oh my gosh, that's the title of your book. And so when I heard that, I almost said, oh my gosh, that's how I'm going to live the rest of my life. Be bold, be weird, be you. I've been living like that anyway, but now I'm cognitive of it. Does that make sense? Now I know I'm going to be bolder, and having passed the lock on, last night, he said something to me that I just adored. He said, he goes, one thing I love about you, baby Trump, is that, people see you and they're like, whoa, like who's this big dude, like, this Johnny Bravo dude, right? Like bodybuilder. He goes, but then you have this grace and this love that you share with people. And he goes, God was the same way. Jesus Christ had that boldness, but he had the love, right? And so I love that we could have that boldness like the Lord, but yet we could still do it with affection and we could do it with love. And I always say that is how we're going to take not only our lives back, but our country back. But I think that's how we have to get on the rest of our lives, is that we have to be bold, but we have to do it with mercy and love.
And you got to do it weird. I'll just redefine it slightly and say, each of us has our own individuality that we got to become the best iteration of ourselves.
I always say best version of you.
Best version of you, right.
Best version of you, right? And I tell people, just don't be like, Mark, people, they read those self-help books and, they want to change like they think they're going to go to sleep and be this totally different person overnight. No, let me tell you, it took you how many years to get where you got? You know what I mean? Like, you're not just going to go to sleep and wake up and be this totally different person. You're going to chip away a little by little by little. If you're 0.5% better, a half every day, what's that? 180, 83% better in 1 year. 1 year. People don't realize that because they want the now pill. They want that I got to change right now. That's why they read books, because they think, oh, if I read this book, I'm going to become a millionaire. No, you got to act. You got to do. You don't just read and then become, right?
Well, I have got to, I got another podcast, I'm sorry to say, right this second. So it has been a delight. If anyone wants to continue, get 2 copies of the book, go over it with somebody, and then go to askthebookclub.com. And we're going to teach you how to be a master asker for free. You can't beat the price. Askthebookclub.com.
Yeah, and I'm also going to publish this on my website too. It'll be on my podcast. I'll be selling his books as well. Thank you, Mark, so much, blessing us with our time. And, if you would you lead us with the prayer before you leave?
Heavenly Father, we're just so blessed that each and every one of you is being uplifted in spirit and soul, and the Holy Ghost is just working full time with all the angels and archangels on each of our behalf, with legions of angels just sourcing and serving us, nourishing us, and taking us to our highest heights. And God only knows how to say yes and amen.
Amen. Love you, brother. I will talk to you later on. God bless. Guys, remember, flex your mind, flex your muscles, flex your truth. You'll be lined up with God, just like Dr. Market and I are, and Crystal. And listen, then you go out and you can align others up with God, doing his work, his will, his way. God bless. See you guys.
Blessings.